Good day, everybody. How's it going out there? Now, the reason I don't call this a news channel per se, sometimes I cover topics that are not really timely, but I feel they're of the appropriate time. And what I mean by that is, sometimes, the news happens every day in the furry fandom. The furry fandom's getting a lot bigger. And, there's, things that happen at conventions. There's sort of this, that, and the other thing. The wheel of discourse as it turns around and around and around over and over and over again. But sometimes I think that important stories are the ones that lend themselves to a credence of time and understanding the bigger picture as opposed to things that happen on an individual day-to-day basis. And I think that today we're going to be covering a tragedy that happened in the year 2022. But I think it has a very important echo of, and it's a very important story to share today for multiple reasons. One, because my theory as to why this person had removed themselves from this world, it shows that it was sort of a short-sighted thing, which many times when somebody tragically removes themselves from this world, it can be a situation where it is a very short-sighted thing. It's a short-term, as it's popularly said, it is a long-term solution to a short-term problem. And interestingly, this doesn't have much to do about politics, but it actually has something to do about finance. And social and financial things typically they blend together as well as oil and water. But I think that sometimes there are echoes of patterns in human behavior about feeling usefulness and having fulfillment within those dynamics. Humans are going to human, and they have just as much of emotions when it comes to their financial well-being as much as their emotional and social well-being and those kind of networks and things like that. So I think as many furries find themselves in the past month in a very harsh place where they see that the social sort of constructs going in the wrong direction, it feeling like a very dark place, feeling like we're going down a bad path where, our government's trying to bully people into believing certain things or following certain things that most furries want to have nothing to do with. I think that in the long term, it is one of those things where, society will move forward even if it is at a slower pace than most were hoping in this fandom. And I think it's important to realize that even though things may seem dark now, doesn't mean that they're going to be as dark in the future. Things can get worse, but as long as you stay around and try to work to make things better, they can also get better. But you have to be here to work for it, and you can't think of you can't view your own failures as that. So to sort of put a ham on this is obviously, this story is going to be a little bit about a furry who took their own life. So if that's not your kind of story, I would say that you should probably go to, we can talk again next time. If that topic is not one that is great for you, that's absolutely fine. But this one's going to be about a person called MystDingo. The final tweet that MystDingo had made in August 24th of 2022 basically went like this. Another day with 20 hours of sleep because of lack of meds. Missing work and connecting with people. It's surreal going from willpowering through life, doing 15-plus hour work days for a decade, to being unable to function even in a basic way. Now, a lot of people can say that that's not healthy. Working 15-hour days for a decade straight is absolutely not healthy. And there's actually a word in Japan for that where you basically work yourself to death. I can't remember the word. But there is like a phrase of like working oneself to death. And I think the reason that this topic hits me so much is because currently at my office, like in order to get the tasks that are done the tasks that are assigned to me done in a reasonable manner, and I think a quality manner, is like it's requiring me to put in 12-hour days, and it's starting to get to the point where I've been burning out for about a year now. And but at the end of the day, I try to look out for my future self by not getting into expending too much. And I think that that's the thing that separates myself as the kangaroo from this dingo. And that, like, if my employer ends up being dissatisfied with the quality of my work, even though I've been quote unquote, working hard, that if they were to let me go, I'm not going to see that as a play on my own value. I'm going to see it as they're not understanding how to manage things. They're not understanding how to actually utilize their human resources properly. And that I should utilize, the kindness that I forwarded to myself, by means of, having an emergency fund, having these things in place so that if, worst comes to worst, if I do find myself in a position where I can barely, quote unquote, function, I would be able to manage this. Unfortunately, I don't think MystDingo is a person who put themselves in that position. In fact, they probably put themselves in a position where they were not that. And as a result, because of that, the situation where they went from saying, well, I'm sleeping 20 plus hours a day, became they passed away the following day. They were from Colorado. They loved cars, fursuits, and adventure. And notice that all three of those things are very expensive. They were born in 1987, so they were younger than I was when they passed on. So I was born in 1985, so they're 2 years my younger. But they passed on in 2022. That means they're about 35 when they passed away. Very young and very tragic. And I think this is why it's important to talk about this topic now. And the reason it's like, it might seem like a strange thing to talk about somebody who's passed on for 2 years, but I think it's a personal story for me because I'm a workaholic just as much as Myst seems to have been. But I think that one's relationship with society and one's relationship with money is that you have to have a long-term plan and a long-term goal, but also have a reasonable goal, right? You're not going to ever have all the money in the world, and you definitely shouldn't. And in social interactions, and not everybody is going to be your friend, and there are going to be people who hate you for who you are. And understanding that you can't have all the money in the world, and not everybody is going to love you for who you are. You need to have the wherewithal to say, do I have enough love for myself, love for my family, love for my friends, and do I have that as a foundation so that when I reach those storms in those rocky areas where a person has more influence over social cliques or has those things, that I can weather that storm should it come in the other way. And I think that you can see that in sort of the attitude here. And I'm going to contrast this sort of thing here with this. And I think it's a very important thing. So this tweet here, I think, kind of shows, why Myst might have devalued himself a little too much, and tragically too much. He posted a tweet here, and it's sort of a philosophical question. It's like, do you take this red pill and restart your life at 6 years of age with the knowledge you have now, or do you take the blue pill and have $10 million in cash? Myst says the red pill in a heartbeat. 10 million, and their reasoning is this. 10 million is a joke given the modern market knowledge can do, not counting crypto. Plus, being autistic, it took me 2 decades to really build the ability to socialize in a meaningful way. being able to relationship build young would be life changing. And I think that's a fair thing to say. I think the last paragraph is a very fair thing to say. For other people who would take the red pill, it's like having time and being able to build social relationships, and having the ability to live from the year of 6 years old and have that knowledge that you have now and kind of like move forward with it. There's weird little tricks about it because it's an interesting thought experiment, and I can like probably go for hours talking about it. But like if you start from the age of 6 years old with the knowledge that you have now, you'd obviously probably want to hide a little bit of that knowledge because as a 6-year-old who's too smart, you can kind of isolate yourself a little bit, because your peers, you're going to be a lot smarter than your peers are, and you're going to end up in a very isolated sort of thing if you don't lean into the fact and dumb yourself down a little bit in your peer group, just a note. But the other good option with the red pill is like, well, time is more valuable than money is. It's like, well, you're in your mid 30s and you have $10 million in cash. You still only have, about half of your life left to live. Whereas if you're 6, you have your whole life ahead of you. You can enjoy things, and even if you're not rich, right, you can enjoy that time. And that, to me, is a good answer. What's not a good answer, just one more thing. What's not a good answer to that question is $10 million is a joke. No. $10 million is objectively a lot of money. I would fair to say probably about 95% of people in this planet will never have $10 million to their name. I certainly am not. Like, at this current trajectory, there's no way, even myself, who is, who nerds about finances a little bit, who actually studies this stuff and actually has done, like, gotten out of debt and done all that stuff, even myself, I'm probably not going to be a person who has $10 million to their name. More than likely, if I'm on my current trajectory. And most Americans are not going to. Most Americans are going to barely have like over $500,000 to their name. Like, to those Americans, $500,000 is a lot of money. $500,000 is a lot of money. And while inflation and rising prices of housing and all this stuff is causing it to objectively be seen as less and less, the reality is that $10 million is a lot of money, and it's probably going to be a lot of money for a long time. $1 million is a lot of money still, even though it's like, it's not, $1 million doesn't get you through retirement as much as it used to. And, if, you're following that 8% rule and you're not using as Social Security, or you're not relying on it at all, yeah, sure, you might whittle through that $1 million within a retirement, especially if you go out and travel and do a bunch of stuff. Because now you have a bunch of free time and you got to, you're sitting there bored. And so because you're sitting there bored, you're spending more than you used to when you were working, because when you were working, you were doing things for your employer and didn't have a lot of free time. So now you're spending a little bit more than you used to. Sure, you can whittle through retirement quicker, and that's something to take into consideration for that. But $10 million is still a lot of money. If you had $10 million when you were young, if you're 20-something and you have $10 million, you could probably retire and use that $10 million to, like, you take, the 4% rule or whatever, and take 4% of your investments and to mitigate your growth, and you could probably live off of that for the rest of your life. $10 million is objectively a lot of money. As you get more and more responsible, it doesn't seem that way. Like, I'm responsible for some contracts in my job, and it's like, $1,000 here, $1,000 here starts to blur together. But $1,000 to you as an individual is still a lot of money. Right? It's like, if I had to pay $1,000 to do something, it's like, ouch, that hurts a little bit. And I always think about it like that. It's like, if you had a bill, how much of a bill would you have before you start to feel pain? And that's sort of how I sort of evaluate what sort of class you're in, right? It's like if something's $100 and you feel a lot of pain, if something is $10 and you feel a lot of pain, obviously you're not doing very well. If something's $100 and you feel a lot of pain, you're probably about average. $1,000, you're probably upper middle class. If it's $10,000 before you feel pain, then you're probably like in the upper class. And then if it's like $100,000 before you feel pain, then you're definitely rich, right? Like if $10 million and you don't feel pain, there's a problem there. Either you undervalue money too much, and because of that, you're not going to respect the fact that you work your butt off, for so little, and you work your butt off for so long, and it's not enough. It's never enough. Because if you have $10 million and it's like, well, that's not enough, when is it going to be enough? And that's sort of what gets you down that rabbit hole. But how can I say that it is the crypto winter that harmed this furry? That it was the thing that finalized this sort of thing. In that it was in 2022. So basically, for those of you who don't know, and don't follow crypto space, which is probably a lot of you because you're furries. And I don't have any doubts that it's sort of probably a whole different world to you. As I said, I only dabble in it and I only look at things because the interesting thing about financial news, when I dabbled in it, it's actually like the real. It's sort of like news and actual social news in real time. It's like by the time you're hearing about it, it's already happened, and it's like, and you have this sort of misleading things and people trying to move you in a certain direction, and it's all that stuff that happens in normal news, but it's like on steroids. So especially with like newfangled things like crypto's the future, and this person clearly I think got rabbled into that. Here we have a photo of Mystguided, which is sort of a sad name that they kind of chose for themselves, but before they had taken their own life. I think that kind of shows how they felt that they had kind of went in the wrong direction in their life, tragically. Which is why I think it's important to share the story, because I think that you can learn from losses and understand that losses are temporary unless you don't make them that way. But you can see their characters on a sort of it's a Tesla vehicle of some kind. Given the white rims around the thing, I think it's one of the more expensive ones. It's not a Model 3. I don't even think it's a Y. I think it's a Model X. Sorry. I think there's a weather thing going on here. Uh-oh. What's going on? Breaking news. Heavy lake of sidewalk. Huh. Well, the throughway is closed. I'm stuck in the cold and wintry. Anyway. Good thing I got home today. Anyway, back to the news. Anyway, so we have them sitting on their Tesla car here, and I think it's one of the more expensive ones. I think it's like the Model X or the Series S. I don't know. Like, I'm not a big Tesla fan. Somebody else could probably tell what it is, but I'm sure it's one of the more expensive ones. And he's like cars, silly shenanigans, the occasional suggestive 30s. And then we have basically he has this thing saying ping on his thing. And I investigated what ping is, because $, usually when you see a $sign in front of 4 letters like that, it usually means it's some sort of either a crypto or some sort of stock. It's some sort of $sign. It's some sort of financial thing. So I did research on it, and it looks like it was $ ping, which is what's called a sonar crypto, which I've never heard of sonar crypto before this. There's a lot of derivative crypto spaces out there. There's so many, because everyone's trying to find the next big thing. Because it's too late to go after Bitcoin, or it's too late to go after Ethereum because they're already popular and all that stuff. So everyone, instead of trying to believing that they missed the boat on the things, people will come up with this new, people have this new thing happening with this, and they'll try to create new places, and then it becomes like a pump and dump kind of a thing. There was actually a coin called Squid Game, and very fittingly, the Squid coin ended up being what's called a rug pull, which is they basically hyped it up. A bunch of people poured a bunch of money in. They're like, oh, we're going to have this Squid Game. We're going to have a bunch of games, and the winner of those games are going to get the whole pot of the game. But before the games began, one of the people just yoinked all the money out of it. Like, there wasn't really any way to get your money out. That's the whole point. It's sort of like you were putting money into it, and then it was like you couldn't take it out, and then somebody yoinked the whole dang thing. And very Squid Game-like. 10 out of 10 sort of emulation of monetary greed. But you have that sort of thing here, even like in recent things, even with this crypto winter ending, I don't think Ping really ever recovered, like unlike Bitcoin and Ethereum. I don't know if Ethereum has actually recovered or not. I haven't looked that one up, but so the interesting thing is that I have two black bars on this thing. The second black bar that is over here is in essence where MystDingo committed suicide, right? Was in August of 2022. So that's that second black bar that you can see on the picture. The first black bar was other things were going wrong with Mystguided's life. They had broken up with their loved one. They had gotten the car that they're sitting on in the photo. I think they ended up getting into a car wreck with it. So they were not having a great year. The things that they found a lot of value in, their relationship, their car, the value of their crypto investments, all those things came to sort of this head. And interestingly, it's like, I think there was an interesting thing I heard on a finance channel recently, that sometimes people triple leverage in favor of themselves, but they don't realize it. Like they're taking on a lot more risk than they think they're taking on. And it's very much true, right? People will buy a car for themselves and have a note, right? They'll make a debt payment. They'll buy a house for themselves. They're always thinking that they're going to get the promotion, or they're going to get the big thing, or they're going to get the big promotion, or the big the thing, right? They're going to grow as a person, that's going to be infinite, and then so they take a lot of risk. They grow into a bigger fishbowl. They push themselves to the point of basically not being able to function. And I think that at the end of the day, it's like life is a marathon and not a sprint, and you have to really pace yourself when it comes to finances, or when it comes to friendships and social things. It's very much a thing that you got to be careful about. This person obviously pushed themselves too hard, and at the end of the day, it ended up being that it ended up hurting themselves for it in a very permanent way. So I mean, like, this is the this June 2022. This is where he talks about like all the different things that he was dealing with. He said he'd give anything to go back 6 months. While going back a year would make me tens of millions, I needed that loss to find friends and those that really mattered. 6 months would have let me build a meaningful life. Words will never change the past, nor will dwelling on it. It just feels beyond cruel that life lined up so many opportunities for happiness the past year for me, and I had to blow them all. Most of my friends are afraid to love or hang out with me, for good reason. I'm sitting here in crippling pain, likely to lose a finger, which is completely unrelated to totaling my car last week, by the way. So he ended up totaling his car in June of 2022. And it's all totally meaningless. My life has been full of pain. Anytime I seeked happiness in my life or self-acceptance, bad things happened. So I kind of said fuck it and worked my ass into a nearly early grave to try to make something of myself, to achieve massive dreams, a goal most of which my mental handicaps cannot achieve. To be a role model that if I can do it, so can you. I think that this comes back to the whole workaholism, to the point of like, and this is a big story, and this is the reason I think it's important. It's an important story for myself, people like myself, because I'm a workaholic too, and I think there's a lot of furries who work themselves really hard, and I think it's very important that when we're discussing being a role model for people, you don't have to be a multimillionaire. It's just not something you have to be. If that's what you think is going to impress people, then don't do it. Because it's like people are going to be impressed with you or they're not, whether you have $1 to your name or 10 million. Never. And also, if you're like, I think that honestly, if people were honest with themselves in the world, I think that some of this, social political nonsense would also ebb its way too. It's like, you don't have to get involved in other people's lives or try to make other people and mold them into the way you want them to be. And you especially shouldn't be doing it through the government. And as long as you are true to yourself and know who you are and do the best you can for those who care about you and those who love you, and you need to love yourself as well, you're going to get farther than trying to strike it big into this thing. Because at the end of the day, I think that people who are Mystguided, such as the Dingo here from Colorado, is that what he didn't understand is that like he was trying to live a life of the future. He's trying to say, oh, I got this nice shiny new car, this nice Model X big Tesla car, like, and that impresses people. And I need to impress people by having wealth and exuberance and showing off that wealth and exuberance. And it became part of his personality, to the point where it's like you could tell he was very much into the financial spaces and like the memes of the financial spaces. Because I did notice a tweet of his that kind of showed sort of how into the weeds he was a little bit on that. And this one is a tweet that he made on it's sort of a company that sort of became a meme in the 2020s. The WeWork. It's like, we're standing outside the WeWork in Reno. Like, we're about to make it WeYif. For those of you who don't know and are not in the financial like understandings, WeWork was a sort of a work rental company. There, if you want to have a good video on it, I'll have a video in the link in the description and probably in the card here. If the card, I don't know if cards still exist. If they do, I'll put it up there. There's a Patrick Boyle did a whole thing about WeWork and sort of the CEO behind it, but he's very much one of those like CEOs, like cult of personality CEOs. Larger than life, like, we're gonna do this weird thing and we're gonna like make this like, oh, we're gonna make the office like sort of a hangout place and it's gonna be cool and we're gonna rent these places. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, along with how expensive WeWork things actually were and sort of the market behind it, like not really like you're going up against established people who are renting commercial spaces and trying to make it new and fancy. Like, unfortunately for WeWork, they ended up going through a bankruptcy, which, fitting with the theme of this video, recently WeWork, under new management's coming out of bankruptcy, apparently, and sort of reestablishing itself, and sort of trying to get back on the ground and working their way through, showing that just because something bad happens doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen forever. And doesn't mean that you can just try not to give up, right? Even if things seem like it's over, it not necessarily is until like you give up on yourself. And so, at the end of the day, you have to care for yourself because the machine will not. And to put a big, fine, bold letter on that, I'm going to finish off with a tweet I saw on this situation that made my jaw go, like I saw it and I was like, oh no. I was like, oh man. So, let's see. We're gonna put on a sad face here because the computer's very mean. So, because the machine will not be kind to you, and here is why. When I saw this tweet, I oofed hard. This is Confer AI. So, for those of you who don't know, in the furry fandom, this is a very known, infamous sort of computer program that's been in conventions for multiple years now. I still don't know if they still do it. I think they do. But basically, you take a photo in front of it, and the AI just says you are this or you are that. In March of 2022, a few months before the person in this picture would take their life, the AI said that they are a bubble. Now, for those of you who don't know, a bubble, I think most people know what a bubble is in the financial term. It means that you are in a position where you are it means you're in a position where you're in, like, basically the housing bubble of 2028, things like that. So basically somebody is in something and it's about, like, they bought something at an extremely high price and it's about to all come crashing down. So this AI was several months too soon in its statement. When I saw that, my jaw dropped because I'm like, ouch. Ooh, AI, too soon. But basically, it's important that when you are looking at, when you're trying to manage your life, when you're trying to manage who you are, what you are, and who you are, don't try to let CEOs and people in things make you feel like you're a part of something just because you're buying in. You need to look out for yourself because the people, and this is sort of like a blessing that I think I had in my early life. It's like in that Garth Brooks song where it's like, sometimes you thank God for unanswered prayers, right? The first job I had out of college, like, I got fired within like 8 months, and I learned very soon and quickly at that point about like how fickle employment is. So, like, basically I would always had a good handle on, not overexpending myself financially. But at that point, it was like, it's really solidified in myself of, you need to get out of your debts as soon as you possibly can because your employer is not going to stick around with you forever, right? They may just toss you at a random whim. So, you work hard, but you don't play hard. You don't go on adventures. You don't buy big fancy cars, because the more you do that kind of stuff to yourself, the more you're going to have to work harder for longer. And you may not get an opportunity to do that. Because either your body could give up on you or your employer could give up on you. So always be aware of that. If you're a younger furry, hopefully you took something out of that. And I think that's why I wanted to talk about this. But most importantly, that despite the fact that, this person was saying, like, I lost millions of dollars during the crypto winter. all of a sudden, apparently tens of millions of dollars was a lot of money, and losing it was too much. And losing all that, and he saw it as a failure on his own part, that he couldn't be a role model anymore because he lost that tens of millions of dollars, right? Because he said, well, I have that, I've established that. And, then the things changed and he didn't have that anymore. And all of a sudden, tens of millions of dollars was a lot of money that he no longer had, allegedly. So always be aware that these things are fickle, and these times are fickle, and the same is true of social interaction, right? The same is true of our society and the direction in which people are sociologically trying to push it. Power is fickle, but it's only temporary, right? Things can go down and go south. When you can have a crypto winter, but will you survive? It's important that you survive to see that those things will thaw out in time, and and can recover. Markets can recover. You can recover as long as you play it smart. And same thing with sociological and societal issues and turmoils of politics. You may falter, but as long as you're persistent and you know who you are and you do good things for other people, then in turn, hopefully things will come around for you. And if they don't expect it, but feel proud that you're doing good for that you're doing good for yourself and for other people. You don't need to make millions of dollars to be a role model. You don't have to do those things. And if you think that that's what you need, then eventually, if you fail at that, if you fail at making those millions of dollars, you may find yourself pushing away friends, because all of a sudden you don't have, if you're being, if you're paying their way, or you're doing things like that, where you're like, I'm going to be very generous, financially generous to my friends, then they tie that generosity, that financial generosity, to who you are and to your value. Then you could have that issue where friendships become harder, relationships become harder as well. I think it's a very important lesson, and I think it's a timeless one. So I think that's why I wanted to cover this one today, in an interesting juxtaposition with how, social political things are sort of in a winter right now for most of the furry fandom. But just like the crypto winter of 2022 ended up ending and basically seems to be over with at this point in time, similarly, angry and selfish people might get political power, but eventually, they will also ebb and flow away, and hopefully better people and more determined people that'll look out for the future of more people will find themselves in those positions of power once again. And that winter that we find ourselves in will also be a short-term thing. So do not commit a long-term solution for a short-term problem, no matter what you do. Thank you very much for watching. Kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section. If you have any thoughts on this, let me know. Thanks. Have a good one, guys. And keep on keeping on, because the winter is only temporary. I say as they close the thruway outside my house. Yeah. Oh, it was thematically appropriate. The winter is only temporary, but it is here. Have a good one, guys.